whatever you hope to find. It's a pretty good use of your time. Let's learn and talk about things like squirrels and strings. You might think we're bananas. It's the Biggie, Kelly, and your Nana show.
Why do you do this to me? Welcome to the Biggie, Callie, and Nana show. How's it going, everyone?
How's it going?
Thank you for joining us.
All right.
While Callie makes fun of me and texts.
I'm not texting. I wrote down my question.
Oh, all right.
Because we're doing the uncomfortable question, right?
I apologize for the judgment.
No, you're fine. I could have just as easily been texting, even though I don't know who I'd be texting at this hour. You guys are all here. Seriously, like I text you guys and my wife.
COVID life.
And yeah, I text you guys and my wife, and she's probably asleep by now. All right, so this is my uncomfortable question. You guys are gonna have to stick with me, all right?
Okay.
There's meaning and there's importance.
Are there multiple parts to it? Because you're such a deep thinker. Can we go one part at a time?
No, there's only one part.
All right.
But I want you to think about it. And I don't want you to think it's like a non sequitur. I want you to... This is a segue into what we're going to talk about today.
Okay.
So you just got to... It may feel like it's not, but just...
Okay.
Just stick with it, okay? So the other day in the news, PETA had posted something. And I'm going to read you what's that like?
Nothing.
Take two.
So don't hate on my beliefs. All right. This is a safe zone. So this is what they posted the other day. I just want to read it first to preface my question. Words can create a more inclusive world or perpetuate oppression. Calling someone an animal as an insult reinforces the myth that humans are superior to other animals and justified in violating them. Stand up for justice by rejecting supremacist language. So what they were referring to was, people who call people rats, people call people snakes, people call...
Oh, okay.
And, you're insulting the animal by calling that person a rat.
Dirty rat.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so you're oppressing that animal by associating with them with that kind of person, when snakes aren't necessarily like that, right? Snakes are people too. And... And so my question, this is the uncomfortable question. I want you to really think about this. How are you perpetuating speciesism in your day-to-day life?
It's made me terribly uncomfortable, I'll admit.
Speciesism.
I don't get it. Explain it.
It's a form of systemic oppression against animals.
Oh, how do I participate in this
Yes.
PETA thing?
No. What are you doing to perpetuate systemic oppression to animals?
I feel really guilty, like if something accidentally, like a piece of meat sits in the refrigerator and I don't cook it, I feel like I'm wasting that food. I really feel guilty. Like I shit on myself because I'm like, that thing used to be alive. And you just let it
thing, though.
freaking just sit in the
Are you
fridge.
offended, though, because that thing gave its life, or because there's people starving in other countries?
Probably because it gave its life.
Yeah, number one. Because
I feel like I have like a hunter's heart, even though I don't hunt. Like I can feel the purpose of why a hunter does what they do. The honor in processing that meat, wanting to use all of that meat, not wanting to waste it.
But you don't feel the same way when it comes to vegetables.
Do you know how many animals die in
Then I think about the money I lost.
Right, but it becomes something different when it's a non-interactive species, pretty much. Because if it's a cucumber, you never interact with a cucumber, but you can walk up and hug a cow.
Well, I know some girls that interact with cucumbers.
So...
Well,
indeed.
That was crass, but not as crass as my earlier email, so we'll let it pass. Or my earlier text. Anyway.
But I do think it has to do with, does it have eyes? Can I hug it? Can I own one as a pet? You know, I think that those things do matter to a certain extent. But at the same time, I don't feel bad calling someone a rat because I don't feel that I'm insulting the rat because the rat does not speak English. The rat speaks Korean last time I checked.
And when have you ever met a rat who was not dirty? You a dirty rat.
That's true.
And rats are incestuous.
And if they're not dirty, it's because I helped them and caged them. Now it's a clean rat.
But how the hell are you gonna get your hands on it to clean it?
Oh, I just
I lick it clean. That's how I deal with all my gerbils.
I actually just thought of a good follow-up question after we all answer it. And this time we're not going to have me answer it like 3 hours later.
Yeah, please.
There's a trend of that. You two answer the uncomfortable question in like the first 30 minutes. And then like at the last 5 minutes, I like rush into my real quick.
Well, it's because you're like sitting on your high horse judging us and your eyes get all squinty like, let me interpret what these fools are going to say.
The commoners.
The commoner.
So you perpetuate speciesism by not honoring the animal slaughtered for your digestion.
I do it by accident. Not that often anymore. I mean, like when you're younger, you don't care, you're mature, but like
killing innocent animals and stuff.
No, I mean like literally letting something go bad in the fridge. I feel shit for that.
Yeah.
Or cooking a meal. You ever cook a piece of meat, and it just didn't taste good, so you like threw it away?
You mean like it was rancid?
No, or it had too much fat in the middle, or it just didn't sit with your taste buds.
Can you imagine if someone did that to you? They cooked you and they were like, "There's too much string," and they just threw it away, and you're like, "I gave my life for your nourishment," and you just throw me in the trash can.
We know probably because we didn't have much money growing up. Like I don't let food go to waste at all, even if it's like nasty gristle. I'm like, I'll choke it down.
Ugh, I can't do gristle. Or fat. I can't do like fatty. Ugh.
Oh, I got a steak downstairs in my refrigerator right now. It's a half a steak. Somebody that went shopping for me bought this fucking steak that's like 1.5 feet long and it's like 3 inches thick. Took forever to grill it and get it right. But when I cut into it, it was like the cheapest steak you could buy, and it's just nothing but fat through the whole thing. I sat there and ate this entire half a steak because it's steak at the end of the day. I don't care what kind of steak, but I refuse to just throw it in the trash can. So I sat there and just for fucking 30 minutes. Yeah. My jaws hurt today from eating this steak.
Today.
Well, I just not terribly long ago just started eating meat again.
Now,
I was a vegetarian for like almost 9 years.
Kurt Cobain actually said it's okay to eat fish because they don't have any feelings.
Do they not have nerves? Because I feel like they might.
Oh, they definitely have nerves, but I mean...
They look so depressed when they get that hook in their mouth.
Mm-hmm.
They do. They do look sad. Now, I will say something that made me sad. 2 things. One, I feel kind of guilty for always saying, I like my steak so raw, I still want to hear it mooing in the back kitchen. That's hilarious, but actually it's pretty mean. But the second thing is, I remember me and 2 of my buddies were kayak fishing, and we caught one of us, not me, caught a sturgeon, I think it's called.
Mm-hmm.
It could be. That's a type of fish.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what it was. I don't fucking know. I don't fish often enough to know all the different ones. But anyways, it was some kind of prize fish that lives like 27 years or something. You're supposed to throw it back in, treat it with care and everything. Mm-hmm. Well, the hook got hooked in its gill.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a young one, and it was super healthy. But the hook got in its gill, and there's not much you can do there. Like, they're going to die. And they took the hook out and put it back in the water and tried to get it nursed back to where it would start swimming around again, and it didn't. And I just thought that was really sad.
I watch A Fisherman's Life. It's on YouTube. It's a really cool dude. He gets out. It's so peaceful to watch. And the dude really knows his shit. He does sea fishing. And then he does, he'll go to the middle of nowhere and find, like, these awesome lakes. But I watch how he kills the fish. And it's very cool. It's very humane. You know, of course. Well, he slits their throat and he bleeds them. But it's, it's fast, and he's very conscious about how he approaches that thing, I appreciate that.
It's funny, Nana, that you brought up hunting, like, right off the bat. and because I'm a hunter too, and a lot of my friends are hunters, and I'm telling you, hunters have a special connection with nature that you don't see with like vegans.
Yep.
And it's funny because the one side is way more preachy about it, yet the hunters have a really like a kindred bond with nature and a respect.
Yeah, respect is definitely.
Especially my
the word
friends
I would use.
where I live that are like Monacan. You know, we have a pretty decent Native American population, and
you do.
they all hunt. They, all of them. And they say prayers for them, and they thank them, and there's just a real bond with nature.
Whenever Rogan on the podcast mentions it, he brings up a really good point, which is, be it a hunter with a single round right to the heart, knocks the animal over quick. Even if it does run a mile on pure instinct, it's still a much faster death than anything that it would endure out in the cold and the wilderness. There's that, hunting, and then there's factory farming, which factory farming can be gross with the methods that they do.
Oh, it drives my wife insane.
Right,
it's horrible.
But the cow punch straight to the... That's like the most... If I could go out as a person one way, that'd be it. I don't want to die of cancer and last for 3 months because nobody will put me down like I need to be put down.
Hey,
I'd rather have that punch, boom, right between the eyes.
I think Callie would put you down.
Hey, if things
All you gotta do is ask him.
I was going to say, if your social credit gets bad enough, that might be your way out.
So, but what Joe mentioned in the show was hunters and factory farming people. Hunters let the game live their good lives and then end them quickly. Factory farming, they're just doing it for money, but they don't make they don't quarter the calf with a bunch of horses. They don't do it terribly. They generally put it down with an air gun.
Now,
and
I do have a story that's a little opposite of that, though.
I do too, because I saw a video once of a cow that was stripped of its flesh, and it was still alive, and it was still mooing. It was really sad. Yeah, it was like a Faces of Death video or something. They clubbed baby seals in it too.
I had a client that worked at like a Purdue factory, and he had waiters and would wade in blood, and chickens that weren't killed properly, he would cut their heads off.
So, but Joe mentions that we as human beings killing animals is actually giving them the best death possible, the most humane death possible in almost all scenarios.
Well, especially
because if you compare it to like a bear will just sit there and pull your leg off and eat it while you're screaming in the background.
Well, you gotta kill
cougars. Everything will.
I don't know necessarily if I condone hunting for bear, but I feel like you gotta kill that thing if it's coming after you. Now, some people, like I think Joe Rogan does hunt bear.
Why would you have an issue hunting bear but not deer?
Well, because I just don't see it as a necessity.
Well, the meat's not good.
I don't see it as a necessity to kill a bear when you can. I guess it might be like a pecking order.
What if they're overpopulating an area like black bear?
Then perhaps there's a necessity.
To kill it.
Now, of course.
Okay. Well, that's generally, we only hunt things that are overpopulating or things
but don't
that regen
typically want to stay unseen? Bears?
That's what I was just going to say.
They're not easy to find. It takes a lot to hunt
Where
them.
we live, there's no grizzlies, just black bears. And 99% of black bears, if you yell at them, they will run away.
Yeah. They're not... Now,
And
if you
if
get
you
into
can
a fight
do that,
with one, it's vicious. Like, they'll tear you to pieces. And if you're a small child or something, if they know they can win the fight, they might jump on you. But if you're a man and you jump up, they don't want to fight like a grizzly. A grizzly will come at you.
I told my kid to be, if he sees a bear, because we have bears where we live, and you'll occasionally hear them. I was like, if you see one in the woods and he sees you, I was like, just pretend you're a dinosaur. And he's loud and rawr, rawr, and I was like, just do that, you will scare it away. Unless it's defending cubs, like, it will run.
Most animals in general do not want to fight you. The only thing that's going to really fight you as a human being is something that's hungry and it's stalking you.
Or defending its young.
I see bears kind of almost as complex. I mean, probably not, but close to being as complex as monkeys.
They're not that smart. Elephants
I feel like
elephants are.
Elephants, yeah. Elephants
did you know
are near and
elephants
dear
have
to me.
Elephants actually they grieve and they have funeral services
Yeah.
for other elephants.
Yep.
Yeah, they have a whole thing. I know. I knew more about elephants. Too bad we didn't know what we were talking about tonight. I could have spilled out. There's that. They're beautiful animals.
Well, that's why you've got elephant boneyards. Is they go to their grave to die with their ancestors,
and their families go around the body and they grieve.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Who could kill something like? I mean, I guess some people could.
Poaching there's poachers there's a certain circle in hell for them.
Well, and I won't eat certain things. I watched a documentary once about octopus, and I won't eat octopus because I heard they're super smart. And I'm like, why? I'm not going to eat something that's really smart.
That is crazy. You mentioned that. I was watching it on Ancient Aliens just the other night, octopus. But Ancient Aliens is fun because they give off a lot of facts too. If you get past all of which some of it makes sense, but if you get past a lot of the silliness, it's just a lot of good historical facts and a lot of good nature facts. And they were talking about octopi the other night, and they are odd how different their DNA is to everything else and the different characteristics that they have. It does seem like
they're
one of the most
pretty complex.
Yeah, they're super complex. They've got 9 brains. Small portions of brains in their tentacle that react to their brain in their head. Not nerve endings, but actual brains.
Yeah.
In each one of their tentacles.
It's really
cool.
And
they have 3 hearts.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'll eat a squid. I'll eat calamari in a minute. But
I'd eat an octopus.
I wouldn't eat an octopus.
There's nothing on this planet that I wouldn't eat. I mean, if something's rare and it's almost extinct, no, just out of but I don't hold, I don't have a soft spot for any specific animal. In other words, elephants are smart, but if we had an overpopulation of elephants, I would eat an elephant for sure. If there was enough of them, you wouldn't?
Not after I saw a funeral. I would be like, oh.
That's a good point.
I'd be like, I totally snorted on air, but I'd be like, oh no.
What about you,
Callie? I just
Callie?
can't even handle it.
You gonna eat an elephant if you get the chance? I want to try every cuisine I can.
I mean, let's be real. I mean, evolution, survival of the fittest. If I had to feed my family.
No. Just, you had the opportunity.
To try it, and there's plenty of them. It's not, they're not extinct or endangered. They are, or critical. They're, I mean, as long as it was done in a humane way, just...
I'd eat well.
It's the poaching that bothers me with elephants. Leaving the body to rot.
Oh, yeah, that's disgusting.
And by the way, that is a little bit of a myth with a lot of Native American tribes, that they use every part of the body.
They would drive the ox, or not the ox, but the buffalo. They would drive them off cliffs and just... They actually start fires like that. It's the craziest thing. They would drive them off a cliff, a whole bunch of them. They would go down there and collect what they wanted out of them, enough to eat and stuff, and they would leave all the carcasses to rot in the sun, and the gases inside of them would expand, and all that methane build up when they finally did pop. If one single spark hit anywhere, in any way, shape, and form, it just became a giant... So when they came around, they found these cliff sides that were burned way up the side of the cliff, and they had to figure out what it was, and sure enough, there's a giant pile of buffalo bones there. Because the buffaloes had somehow caught fire, and all that methane and all that fat just burned up the side of the cliff.
There's a lot of documentation during Western expansion from settlers, seeing just rotting buffalo carcass. Now, of course, they would use the bone if they needed bone for what they were doing, right?
Right.
Well, there's something very beautiful to me about using... or having, we've talked about this before, the idea of reverence for the thing, reverence for knowing that was a life, and you are going to try to optimize that experience. To me that's extremely humane, as opposed to letting a pound of chicken go bad. But you think, but that's a part of it, how disconnected we are when we go to the grocery store.
That's what my wife says all the time is, how many people, they just eat meat for 2 or 3 meals a day. They just go to the store, they buy this packaged thing of ground beef. How many of them could actually hunt, kill, and skin and fillet and then cook that meat? the only reason they eat meat is because it's so convenient. If they actually had to do the dirty work, they probably wouldn't. We're so disconnected from the meat that we eat in our country and around the world in most countries. And so that always bothered my wife.
Well, I feel good about what I do and I've been doing this for a few years, but I have the privilege to be able to do it is I go through like a company, and it's a little bit more expensive to do that, but it's like that these, or you pretty much have a better chance of the animals being treated humanely. Like they advertise themselves. Of course, I haven't been on the thing and I don't know for sure, but they advertise themselves as humanely raising the chickens and letting them live their lives and then slaughtering them, which is the best. I mean, that's the second best thing you could do other than kill the animal yourself, right?
Now,
or not eat the animal at all.
The way that I feel that I give back in this regard is if I do have some meat that's about to spoil or just lightly spoiled, dogs eat carcasses in the wild, and
they're scavengers.
Yeah, I mean, dogs in general. Your dog will go grab a deer. Funniest thing, on my way to work for weeks, I drove by this same little place on the way to work down through here, and I would look to the right of the road, and there was a deer carcass there. I saw it sitting right on the road the first time I passed. Every morning at the same time, I'm assuming the owner opened the door and let his dog run out, but every morning I would see this dog dragging this carcass up the hill, and this lasted for weeks, and this was a very small dog trying to drag this giant deer carcass up the side of the hill to its house, and finally it just disappeared. But it took weeks for it to drag it up there, but it would just go after it every single day and see how close it could get it because it wanted it in the yard as something to gnaw on. Pretty much. And I just thought that was interesting. So what I'm getting at here is my spoiled meat, anything like that, I generally cook it up and give it to my dogs because they're scavengers and they're carnivores. So it only makes sense and it completes that circle of life.
Now, of course, some purebred dogs have been bred to the point where their stomachs can't handle that anymore.
Yeah, my little fellas.
Yeah, so you got to know your dog before you start feeding them raw tainted meat.
Also, I would say if you have a dog that's older that doesn't have that gut biome to be able to digest that, that's probably not good to start them on that. I would start with slightly spoiled meat as they're raising and give them little pieces at a time. That way, because just like me, when I went down to Central America, when I deployed there, like the entire time that I was down there, we didn't eat the cheese because it's, what is it called, non-homogenized or whatever it is.
Non-pasteurized.
Non-pasteurized. So,
which actually means that it has all the bacterial benefit that our cheeses don't.
100%. But if you ate it, you would shit yourself blind for like 2 or 3 days.
Until your body
accepted that bacteria. Right. Exactly. But you would eventually. And if you ate small portions of that cheese, you'd have the shits, but the next day you'd be okay. So on and so forth until finally you were able to sit down and eat a block of Colby if you wanted from down there. But if you just walk down there and straight eat it, man, it would fuck you up pretty bad.
Yeah.
But
my thing is probably bigger dogs can handle that kind of thing too. They're bred for that. They're bred to be out in the wild, and
they're also closer to wolves. Naturally, I mean, because a corgi versus a Great Dane. There's.
My dog is like he mentioned corgis because I have one. Corgis are.
I forgot that you had a corgi. Maybe that was what I just heard.
Corgis are very fox-like.
They're so cute.
They're very cute. And they're very fox-like. Even the way they pounce is like a fox. And
honestly, I don't even know what a corgi looks like. I just thought that it was a small dog. Is there like what is the little tiny dog? Like a chihuahua. You can
not that little.
A chihuahua versus a Great Dane, though. You can obviously see which one represents, like which one's closer genetically to a wolf,
But isn't Great Dane, aren't they bred kind of ridiculous though, to where
any purebred, they're selecting for physical attributes,
Yeah.
not necessarily. A lot of those purebred animals have a lot of health, like hip dysplasia
That's right.
and heart murmurs.
And they don't live that long.
No, they don't. The big dogs don't tend to
Great
live more than
Danes
about
only live
8,
like 8 or 9 years.
whereas like a corgi can live up to 14.
Yeah.
My Doberman Pinschers have like a 9 to 11 year lifespan, so they're literally halfway through their lifespan, and they've got a bunch of things like that, the dysplasia, a bunch of genetic issues.
Our pit bull died at 8, and a lot of those big dogs just. But, well, to kind of stay focused, Biggie, how do you perpetuate speciesism in your day-to-day life?
My answer here is I perpetuate it 100% by exactly what you described, because I will call a person a rat or a snake, and I don't feel bad about doing that, and this is why. And you've heard me say this before. Stereotypes exist for a reason. They do. At the end of the day, as nice as you want to be about it, stereotypes exist for a reason, because more than 50% of said person or said animal exhibits these specific behaviors. It's a pattern. It's recognizable. So if I, as a human being, have to say, stereotypically, I think that because you are this or because you're that, this is how you're going to react to this situation, that is a survival mechanism. And the reason that that's a survival mechanism is if I always know that panthers attack people when they see them out in the jungle, and I think to myself, well, this panther might be different than all those other panthers. I mean, stereotypically, they'll try to eat me, but what if this panther's not? I'm going to get fucking eaten. So stereotypes exist for a reason. I see a bunch of gangbangers down the back of an alley. I see a bunch of skinheads on the subway. Something stereotypical inside of me tells me those aren't people that I want to hang out with.
They're very panther-like.
Exactly. So I avoid that situation, and I think that those stereotypes exist for a reason. I don't mind perpetuating if it becomes animals or humans.
Do we have a lot of evidence that cougars date younger cougars?
Well, I think that it's completely ridiculous. The whole, of course, to me, I'm sorry, that PETA, but the whole damn statement is ridiculous considering that, you know, they're animals. I mean, they're snakes. A snake is cold-blooded. So that's the attribute we're attaching to me saying, Callie, you're a snake. I'm telling you, you're cold-blooded. You're not warm. You're not...
Yeah.
You know, so it doesn't diminish the snake. I don't think the snake's probably
so you don't
fuck
think,
yeah, I'm cold-hearted or
you don't think the
cold-blooded.
snake's offended at all?
So
the
here's
likelihood.
so here's the thing. It's absolute ludicrous to think that an animal can pick up on the subtle nuances of our language.
Yeah.
You know what my dog hears? Blah, 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 dinner. Blah, 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 scout. Blah, 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 dinner. Blah, 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 pet. You know.
Blah, 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 gotta go pee.
Yeah. They're not offended.
And that's one of the smartest animals that can actually pick up audible clues. That's not a rat.
Dogs evolved. I saw this wonderful, wonderful documentary on dogs, how they evolved with the human species. They pick up on subtle nuances of nonverbal behavior.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
They communicate in ways with people that they don't communicate with each other. With dogs, they just have different levels of barking and different posturing. But with us, they have different facial expressions and stuff. They really read us. But verbally, no. It's all the way they communicate with us is nonverbal.
Right.
And so the way you can oppress a dog would be neglect.
Yeah.
Always look miserable at it.
Yeah. Treat it like crap, abuse it emotionally, physically. Those people...
But you could talk to that dog and tell...
Place in hell for those people, too.
But you could verbally say, you're just a worthless dog, and...
But if you just do it with the love, you feel the love bubbling. You're just so worthless.
His tail's gonna go
baby.
nuts.
They're gonna feel how
you're such
you
a piece
feel
of shit.
inside.
Yeah.
They won't get it. They'll be happy. Their tail will wag because they're going on your tone.
Yeah.
So the way you could oppress an animal would be through your tone and your body language, not through the words you're using.
Right.
So it's absolutely ludicrous. And that was the segue into today's topic about the general decline in mental health in our country.
Yeah.
who thinks that animals are oppressed?
That's why I went right into how I felt guilty about like real shit I've done against animals, like leave a thing in the fridge.
Well, in other words, that question
it was so ridiculous. I passed it.
Yeah, you surpassed it and went on to something that was real.
Yeah,
because that was some abstract. That was an art piece that somebody wrote. I mean,
I bet they believe. I bet they believe it. I believe that they believe it.
They believe
and
their
that's
fantasy.
an issue.
That's my point. That's a whole segue into what we're going to talk about with the general decline of mental health in the last few years in our country. But I did want to do a follow-up that I just thought about. Mm-hmm. My answer to that and comfortable question is I do it all the time because I do watch my tone and nonverbal.
In touch with reality?
Yeah, I do watch my nonverbals with them because you can hurt their feelings, and I don't want to hurt my little dog's feelings.
Yeah.
And but in terms of verbal nuance, hell no. I don't oppress my animals or any animals.
Yeah.
That's just not healthy to even think that way. But here's the question.
I chain a tire around mine so he'll get bulk.
So have them little muscles at the top.
Yeah, he's just pulling that shit all day.
Like our pit bull is big like that. So here's the thing. This was the follow-up question I just thought about. And this is actually an interesting one. If, I don't really care what the situation is, it's hypothetical. If you had an adult human, stranger that you didn't know, a child stranger you didn't know, or your dog or cat, and there was a situation where you could only save one of them, what would your priority be?
Yikes.
This is probably more of an uncomfortable question. This is actually a real one.
Yeah, you already know my answer.
Unfortunately, I'm going with the kid. I'm going with the kid.
So you're going to let your little puppy dog eat it? Mm-hmm. You got to watch it.
I'm going with the kid.
Oh, man. Okay. Well,
and then
powerful.
What's the what's
the
hierarchy?
logic?
No. I don't understand the logic. That's kind of self-explanatory. But what is what would be the next one you would save?
Oh, my dog.
And so the adult
without
question, and the adult stranger would just eat it.
Yeah.
So kid, your dog, adult,
dude,
or
whoever.
Okay, so this is very interesting that you would ask this because my parents have some children that live in the next house over that they are in some way related to, right? Mm-hmm. So these children would walk up to the edge of the yard and taunt their Doberman Pinscher. These children would walk up and try to cross over into the yard to play with the Doberman Pinscher, in air quotes, maybe, but it was taunting the dog. The dog was obviously frothing at the mouth, barking at them, because it's this little wobbly creature walking up all crazy, and the dog's not used to that. He doesn't know what that is. He thinks something's about to come into his territory.
He's perceiving that as danger.
Right. Mm-hmm. So the dog's going crazy, and my dad said, if that dog ever gets a hold of one of those kids, then I'm just going to go out there and shoot the dog. I had a major issue with that, because I said...
The dog's just doing what it knows.
Right. And you've told that kid multiple times not to do that. If it nips that kid on the hand, I find that as a great learning lesson. If it takes a finger, I find that as a great learning lesson. I'm the kid that my dad was like, go ahead, stick the knife in the wall. Stick it in the socket there. See what happens, bud. Pull the TV off the shelf. I grew up that way. And I figured things out real fast. Those lessons of actual physical pain set in very well. I mean, you don't forget that.
So your hierarchy would be your dog, the kid, adult, stranger.
100%. Now, there is a difference. There's a caveat to that. If my dog became aggressive to the point where it's just chasing a kid for no reason and trying to murder a kid, that's different.
Yeah, but this hypothetical is you're just saving them.
Saving.
Like a burning building, right?
Still my dog. Yeah.
Dog, child, stranger.
Yeah, because I have no attachment to either one of those other two animals.
And that's the difference between men and women. much.
No, not necessarily. Because
I mean, it's more. All I'm saying is it's an objective way of looking at it.
Yeah,
I'm not saying it's right or wrong.
I'm agreeing with you. Yeah, 100%. It is. The majority of women would go with exactly what you said, and they may put the adult human in front of the dog.
Right,
but almost all of them, it'd be the child. Mm-hmm. I think that goes back to maternal instinct.
Oh yeah.
Well,
but for men,
no, I'm gonna say
you know.
I side with Nana. I'm gonna save the child first, even though, let's be real, I love my dog so much, and she's such a great dog, and I would save the child first, because that child represents a whole future, right? And in evolution, for men and women, is to promote the next generation. Our entire purpose of being is to promote the next generation, to perpetuate our species, right? Mm-hmm. And so that child means a lot in terms of our species. And so I would save the child first, and then my dog would be next, and I might save a human from a burning building.
If it's not going to put me in any danger, I mean...
I'd be like, get your ass, come
am I
on
getting
with
some
me.
social cred for this?
I'd yell at him. I'd yell at the adult, like, hey, come on.
So this is my thing, though, is that I think that part of the reason that I feel that way is because I've met very few dogs in my life that want to kill me, that want to do some type of malicious act towards me. Most of the dogs that I've met during my life...
How many kids have you met that want to do malicious harm to you?
Not that many, but this is where I'm getting at, okay? How many adults have I met, though?
Well, that's why everyone put them at the bottom of the list.
What do you think that kid's going to become?
Well, we don't know that.
He's going to become an adult with plenty of flaws and probably malicious intent towards me and mine.
But maybe if you...
But if there's less children, there's more likely chance that my child will get that job that kid would have if he wouldn't have burned up in the fire.
But maybe if you save that child's life, they would grow to have a hero complex, and they would pay it forward and be a better person.
Maybe. That's a lot of ifs. But if I save my dog, I know it's going to love me. It's going to continue doing the same thing it did yesterday. Just saying.
I don't know. There's a lot of...
Okay, here's another question for you. When you watch movies, I know I'm like this. I've heard that a lot of people are like this. Maybe you guys are different, but there's quite a few of us out there. When I watch a movie, even if it's not a gangbanger situation where somebody gets shot or cops are having a shootout, I'm not talking about that, but like a story to where the loved one is dying and like they're slowly declining and the whole family's there and they're crying, or just lost my love, etc. Or even a war movie, like my best friend's dying, I'm sitting there holding his hand while he's bleeding out from a sniper.
Right.
I never get emotional to the extent with those as I do when a dog dies in a movie. I'll fucking bawl when a dog dies in a movie.
Oh,
like no shit, tears.
Like
real tears.
Old Yeller where the red fern grows.
Yep. 100%.
All dogs go to heaven. I couldn't handle that.
Exactly.
I won't watch it today.
100%. But you have no problem watching the movies where a person dies.
Right.
What is that?
Well, it's a real thing. It's because I feel it too. I feel much more hate, or I have much more of like a visceral reaction to somebody hurting an animal than I do somebody murdering another adult.
Well, now I think that if I just had to guess, I would think that's because one is generally non-malicious. Even if a dog does attack somebody, it's out of fear or necessity because it's hungry. People hurt each other because it's fun to do.
Well, and there are some animals, by the way, that do that. I've had foxes kill my chickens, and they hunt for sport.
Right. They'll just slaughter the whole coop and not eat but 2 or 3 of them.
But true. What I'm hearing you say is, especially with
concerning,
especially with domesticated animals, there's a real strong sense of loyalty and trust. And, a dog you can get a rescue dog that's been horrifically abused, and they will just love you unconditionally. And so that unconditional positive regard that dog gives us puts it really high on our level of responsibility to protect.
My dogs ain't never cheated on me before, man. You know?
And whereas humans are, even though we're tribal, we're not pack oriented. evolution kind of you were talking about with like people and greed, like
individualism.
It doesn't really select people out, and now they can be shunned from society like we talked about the other week, but there is a benefit in evolution for humans to watch yourself first. And whereas animals are pack animals, and I've watched a lot of documentaries my kid loves on the Disney Plus. They have, I guess Disney bought National Geographic or something. They have like all these great National Geographic things on Disney Plus. So my kid watches all these things where they follow wolf packs, and like the alpha, which is a lot of times like the mother or the grandmother in the wolf pack, she has to go out and die alone, because if she doesn't, the pack will not move on. Aww. They will be with her corpse until they starve. And so she has to go hide to die. So they can't find her. Actually, what they do a lot of times is they will go to wolves have huge territories. They will go out to a neighboring pack to be killed.
Yeah.
That way you can't find the body.
Right.
And I mean, what kind of loyalty is that?
Yeah.
You don't see a whole lot of humans that do that.
Right.
No.
Yeah, that's almost a stubbornness type of loyalty.
Yeah, I mean,
well, they're we us. Somebody once told me that there are two different kind of people, and I think dogs are this way. But there's a certain type of person. There's an I and me type of person, and then there's another person who's a we and us. So they always think in terms, one always thinks in terms of I and me, and the other is we us. Dogs are we us pack. That's something so beautiful. Is that the point you were trying to make, is why you think that most people would choose the dog first, because they are like that?
Loyalty.
It's loyalty.
Yeah.
And I had a friend, and he was German, so he was very emotionless. And he looked at everything. I know, the mind peoples. And
I'm sort of German too.
And he looked at things purely logical, like no emotion at all. And we were having that conversation about, can a dog actually love you? And he said, I think it's extreme loyalty.
Yeah.
Over love. They don't 100%. Have that same love like we have. And for our pet, they don't love us. They just have extreme loyalty.
But loyalty feels like love.
And he said, and what's the difference ultimately?
100%. I agree with him.
And he's like, that extreme loyalty might as well just be love.
There is a difference, though. And this is the difference that I get. Is on the surface, there's no difference between the two. They feel the same. But how can you turn one off versus the other? In other words, unyielding love for your child, for your parent, for whatever, means that no matter how weak they get, you're still going to take care of them. You're still going to love them, etc. With my dog, Lucius, he's a big, hardy, powerful boy. And he recognizes me as the pack leader. But the other day, I hadn't been hanging around him a whole lot of time, and we hadn't been spending a whole lot of time together. And for the first time in his life and my life, I had him inside, and me and him were together with his sister. And his eyes just felt a little bit colder towards me than they generally do. And I was sitting there with a Bowie knife while I was cleaning on some of my weapons. But if I wouldn't have had that Bowie knife sitting beside me, I literally would have been a little bit nervous with the way he was looking at me, the way he didn't want to respond to his commands.
You were afraid his loyalties were changing.
Well, I was afraid he was going to try to take my position as alpha.
Well, and there's some dogs that do that.
Exactly. And that's definitely an issue. So that's what I'm saying, that pack mentality and that loyalty is loyalty only because you're the one feeding, supplying, etc.
I think
love is more important, because with love, even if your parents, even if they fed you their whole life, well, now they're getting older and they're not able to take care of you anymore, you'll take care of them. With my dog anyway, in Air's situation, if my dog wasn't eating, it would eat me. I have no doubt about it. But I still love that boy, and he's still loyal towards me, so we work that out.
Isn't the demonstration of being like a pack leader where you walk out the door first and then they come later? Like, isn't that like a establishing that you are the alpha?
Well, like I make sure.
It might be a Caesar Milan thing.
My wife.
No,
I'm not the alpha
So
because they just.
my dog gets it, as most dogs do, because their social hierarchy in a pack is very clear cut. And my dog, I wouldn't even feed her dinner until I'm done eating.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife will make sure before we sit down for dinner every night, she will go feed the dog.
That's what I do.
And I'm like, no, I'll eat first. And then, like, she can lick my plate, or I'll feed her dinner. Mm-hmm. But I eat first.
Yeah.
And my dog, on a strong evolutionary level, respects that.
Yeah.
And
do you do it to make a point?
Yeah.
Does she just
actually? I do. I do it. I do it.
Even if it would be more convenient for you to feed the dog before you're purposely going to.
Or would she still want to eat off of your plate? Because mine do.
My behavior is intentional, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah.
It is establishing that hierarchy, and now I feed my child first.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's certainly not a cruel thing to eat first. I think I do that, like, I will, when I'm like, the dogs are looking up at me and I have a plate of food and I intend to share my food, I won't share with the food with them because I don't want to pass, like, germs and stuff. Like, I'll wait until I finish eating and then give them what I want them to have.
Well, and, like, my wife will give our dog, like, little pieces while she's eating. Mm-hmm. And guess what my dog does while we're eating?
Barks.
No.
Mine barks
no,
at me.
No.
Give me some food.
Yeah, she's the alpha then.
Yeah, he.
Well, no, she harasses my wife.
Oh, yeah.
Guess who doesn't get harassed and gets to eat his meal in peace?
Mm-hmm. You do.
Yep.
Yeah.
And now when she hears me scraping the bottom of my plate or bowl, she'll come over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yep.
Yeah.
That's Pavlovian
My dogs are
conditioning.
So spoiled. I spoiled them, though. I did not establish the alpha thing. But the thing is about the Shih Tzus, they are so sweet. You really can't fuck them up too bad because all they want to do is love you anyway. They want to please you.
Those toy breeds are bred to be love sponges.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And those are it. And all they want to do is please me.
If you had a pit bull or a Doberman, I would say as a trainer, it would be essential that you set a hierarchy. That
I would
knows
agree.
The alpha.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, it's
I would agree.
Terribly
I'd have
important.
to be tough on them
and you do,
like
yeah.
a 6'13" boy.
My parents are not. They let their dog run them entirely, and it is not healthy at all. Mm-hmm. Now, granted, that's a much smaller breed of Doberman, to where at the end of the day, if you put that thing in a chokehold, it's not going anywhere. Mm-hmm. Like, you don't have to worry about it killing you. They're Doberman. Mm-hmm. My Doberman is the exact opposite. Like, there's no way I could fight my Doberman off without a knife.
Yeah.
He'd kill me. But their dog runs them entirely, and it's a smaller dog, and my dog is extremely respectful of me. That type of, I'm going to wait until daddy's done. I'm not even going to look at him while he's eating, because if he looks at me or begs me, I treat him the same way as my children. I'll feed you afterwards, and if you beg, I'm going to scold you, you know?
With a dog like that, the only way you're going to save your own life would be to sacrifice, like, your arm. Like,
yeah.
let it get your arm up and then get its jugular with your free arm.
Yeah, exactly.
Because if you let it get to your neck, you're done.
100%, yeah.
And
I keep that in mind when I'm with him. But that's the thing, is that I look at him like a military bite dog. But I look at him like a drug dog.
I would rather have a dog that I didn't... when our pit bull passed away, we made a conscious decision to get a dog that is not going to destroy us.
Oh, my next dog's going to be a Lassie. I've had enough of this. This is a tool, literally. That's exactly what he is. End of the world, I'll bring him into the house, and he'll just roam the house with me. And if somebody kicks in my door, I know they're tied up or probably dead. Mm-hmm. So that's what he's good for.
Well,
But I used to own a Lassie dog as a kid, and it let somebody just kick the front door open, walk right into the house, and steal a bunch of shit, and the dog just followed him around the house.
We'll see, my dog, you're not going to get away with my dog. And see, now a corgi's a herding dog, and they look like a toy dog because they have little legs, but they're little, and they were cattle herding, but they're actually a medium-sized breed, and I mean they herd cattle, and I was telling you guys earlier about when me and my kid were playing with that stuffed dinosaur and pretending it was attacking us. My corgi had where she actually stopped thinking we were playing and was concerned. She grabbed that stuffed animal by the neck and she's like, oh, they're in danger.
So I see what you're saying. You want a dog that's in between, not some sweet lick-you-to-death lab that'll let somebody break into the house, not a Shih Tzu, not a Chihuahua.
Well, it's funny.
Not one of those dogs that can't do anything and probably won't even try. You want a dog that's in the middle, to where it's not going to kill you, or it's not going to kill the intruder, but it'll tie somebody up. It has some nerve to it, but it doesn't have enough body mass to actually kill somebody.
All you need, when we're talking self-defense here, is 90% of intruders, when they hear a dog barking, they will turn around and go.
Yeah.
Actually, and it doesn't even matter the size of the dog. If you have a Shih Tzu or a Chihuahua, and Chihuahuas are guard dogs, by the way, they will bark their head off, and that will make 90% of intruders leave.
And I think that it's not necessarily that they're afraid of the dog nip.
They know they're
It's
awake.
an alarm.
Yeah, they know now you're awake.
Yeah, now everybody in the neighborhood knows you're here.
Snoopy will bark his balls off when he hears the noise.
Snoopy, that's adorable.
Snoopy.
I love
Snoopy.
So, getting back to the main topic on declining mental health in our country.
We veered away off.
We did. But
okay.
it's an interesting, talking about, the relationship between us and animals. I enjoy that conversation too. But that I think it was Twitter that PETA put that out there. That's not
foolish.
That's not well thinking.
And the fact that people don't destroy that in every way.
They did, by the way.
Well, I'm sure, but
the comment section was hilarious.
I guarantee it was worth a read. But the fact that they felt comfortable enough with the mental health decline that they could put that out there, and at least some people would be like, well, yeah,
the
that
fact
makes sense.
The fact that they believe it enough to put it out there.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Disconcerting.
That's disconcerting, but they wouldn't put it out there if they thought they were going to be publicly humiliated by everybody. If everybody but there's a lot of people that have the same mental health concerns that they do, and they know that. So that's why they feel comfortable to a certain extent.
Well, it's just things have just deteriorated so bad, and it's in delusion of, especially when it comes to the topic of people getting offended or whatever this crazy shit is, where don't, it's like the people are, what I'm trying to say is they're jumping on the bandwagon, but they don't even know what the fuck they're talking about.
So it was Biggie that wanted to talk about this, and we just barely scratched the surface on it when talking about cults last week. Karens
and Sharons.
Karens and Sharons.
Okay, can we get something straight?
I do want to get something straight because I can't remember who it was that sent the message, but Sharons are the liberal version.
Oh,
Karens,
I thought
Karens are
were
the conservative.
Really?
Because it's always Karen that refuses to wear a mask will call the police on any black guy barbecuing in a public park.
Oh, see, no, I thought...
That's Karens.
See, every video that we watch on the Karens in the wild is they're like Portland, Oregon, like far left people like screaming at police.
No, actually,
I think that one lady was in Portland, but
all of them I'm seeing. I'm not seeing very many.
If you look it up on Urban Dictionary, it'll show you like the top 10 responses that Karens are extremely conservative.
Really?
Yeah. That's a thing.
See, I always thought
they've went too far right. They're borderline extremists.
See, so because all the videos I see with Karens were far, they were hypocrites.
I think
they were the ones judging people for being racist while calling the police on on a black man who was walking too close for him in the park.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is the thing is I think that if you see a video of a middle-aged white woman flipping the fuck out, that's called a Karen. Period.
Okay.
And they're using that
It's
for
just
left and right.
It's just a blanket term.
But in general, based on everything that I've read, Karens were originally, they attributed that to conservative middle-aged women who were freaking out and calling the police on every black person.
And now it's just generalized to any.
That's why
white.
Oh yeah, you're not going to hear Sharons anywhere.
With short hair, by the way.
I've developed Sharons.
Right,
that's my own thing because it's so close to Karen, and it's like
you developed the Sharon.
Oh, so that's your theory.
That's
where I don't get it. Okay, so that's your theory.
That's my theory. You've got to be able to differentiate the two because they're extremists on the left and extremists on the right, and both of them are ideologically wrong in every way.
Well, they're identical in almost every way.
Yeah, exactly. In all the wrong ways. Like.
So, what I really wanted to get into this, like in a really deep psychological level. What the fuck is going on? Mm-hmm. I mean, there were always some like rich white women who were out of touch, but you know, this is what's been going on the last like 3 to 4 years is like really intense.
It's definitely new.
Well, let me tell you my hairstyle story, like the full thing.
Okay.
So, and this was just a couple weeks ago. I have a beautiful hairstylist that she's been doing her job forever. So she has a clientele, serious clientele. It's a very wealthy, established. You know, it's like the one thing I do good for myself is I'll spend a bit on a haircut. Anywho, so it's a highfalutin kind of place. So I talked to her about how I'm starting a group. And she's like, oh, that's great. I'd love to get linked up with that, blah, blah, blah. And she said, you know, things are really bad. I'm like, what do you mean? She said, people's mental health are really bad. She said, I can't tell you how many of my clients, women, Caucasian women in their 50s, 60s, you know, late 40s, she says, they are really having a hard time with this pandemic. She said they drink all day. They wake up in the morning and they drink, and they do it they get together with their girlfriends and they drink through the day. So, and I remember our conversation about Karens, and I said, have you seen any correlation with them being politically charged? You know, and she's like, well, some of them, but not all of them. And I was like, well, what do you think is the real problem? And she said, well, they can't do the things that they used to do anymore. And I was like, well, can you give an example? And she said, oh, like take their vacations or do their self-care routine. And I started chuckling, you know, because I'm like, they're privileged. Not
chilled enough?
Yeah, and because I'm like, and I realized immediately my stylist is such a sweet lady. She kind of let me know that was inappropriate because she said, you know, this is a real problem. You know, she said, this is serious.
Yeah, no, it's a real problem. So we're talking about it.
But I mean, it was a lesson for me because I'm like, you know, thinking about all the things I've had to suck up in my life, you know, and I was being judgmental. But she checked me and I processed and I'm like, that really is an interesting topic. That they're not coping well. They're going kind of nuts. I guess I don't know what it is. If it's because they're forced to now confront their issues, be around husbands they don't really love, or figure out their husbands don't really love them.
And there's a double-edged sword to that because if Karens, and I'm just going to use a blanket Karen term, right?
Okay.
If Karens are treating strangers this way, how do you think they're treating their spouse?
How about, just slightly off topic, what about all of those poor 7-year-olds that were named Karen that never had a chance, and this all occurred after they were named?
Now their name is associated with this for life.
Well, they probably switched it to K. Call me K.
Yeah, for sure. Care, something. Fucking anything.
Karen.
Call me Carrie.
Carrie.
I want to be associated with that.
I want to be associated with, like, sucking the souls out of my gymnasium classmates.
Calling the police a lot.
But it's a real thing, and you know, with that I'm not saying that's all the Karens, but it seems like it's in that vein.
So what
they do not have the coping skills to get through something like this.
So
I think that right there is very important. I think it does have to do with coping skills, and I think this is why. I think a lot of these women that you're seeing this from are, if they were career oriented, their career was secondary, and it was all just free money that they spent on themselves. And their husbands primarily took care of them, so they've never learned to cope with the real world. They've never learned to confront real challenges like an adult, so they're confronting them like a child when they see them.
Temper tantrum.
Or they didn't even have a real job. They're just trophy wives. Because the majority of them that you see are wealthy. Yeah. It's rare that you see a poor Karen, because she didn't learn her lesson.
Well, I mean, all right, well, first off, define wealthy. Because a lot of these are not like...
Well, yeah, not super rich, but
these are middle class,
lower middle class, and up.
Upper middle.
And
class.
I don't consider lower middle class to be wealthy.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say that. Comfortable and up, yeah. But you don't see any povertous ones at all. I haven't.
I don't know. Some of those Portland people, I don't foresee them working.
Are you talking about the younger women?
Yeah, I'm seeing it in
I'm
all
talking
ages. I know you guys are kind of talking about like 40 to 60, but
that's what I'm
seeing
focusing
that
on.
seems where the Karen
in these Karens in the wild videos, and there's a lot of them out there.
They're great,
and they're hilarious and terrifying.
Yeah.
And a little depressing actually when you really think about it. Some of these are younger people too.
I did see a few younger ones kind of go off, and they looked more like a Sharon type. You know, were a little bit hippie, younger girls. Just
So,
going.
The thing is, you're rarely going to find a young Sharon, or I'm sorry, a young Karen, and it's not as often that you're finding an old Sharon, if that makes sense. The females that flip the fuck out, the left ones are younger on average, and the right ones are older on average.
I can probably see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Nana's theory is poor coping skills for daily stress, but you hit on a big I would say criteria there with substance abuse, and because I know the few Karens, Sharons, whatever I know and I've met in my life, they have had increasing substance use. Now, of course, substance use is easily tied to poor coping skills, right?
Sure.
But that's just one domain. I don't know. I'm looking at it almost on a spiritual level.
She's looking at it on a substance abuse and coping level. You're looking at it on a spiritual level, and I'm looking at it on a political level.
That's hilarious.
It is funny, right?
But I don't think... honestly, I'm not sure any of us are wrong.
I think you're right. I think it's a big mishmash of everything.
It's very complicated.
It is.
And I think people are just getting uglier.
Okay.
As an American society.
As a society,
well,
I think people are getting
when you see the collapse
uglier.
of any society at its beginnings, people do turn ugly.
Yes.
They become vicious towards one another. That is the beginning of the collapse of society. As people lose their morals and they lose their minds.
And that's why when I say spiritual, it is a moral argument, right? And so obviously you got what I was saying. I think people are just getting uglier as a whole. And what my buddy, he said, well, you know, this was actually a gun control conversation we were having, but he was like, you know, it had nothing to do with gun control. It was actually about a rise in aspiritualism and atheism. And he said, well, you know, actually murders and all that are down and violence is down. I was like, well, no, statistically it's true.
It is.
It is.
We're living in the safest time we ever have.
And so, but I said, statistically you are right, but I'm also noticing people are uglier. They're not violent physically, but they're uglier to people. So it's like you're seeing a decrease in religiosity. And by the way, my mother said this, and this was very astute of her. With COVID, they've been keeping people from going to church from regulations. So we have a bunch of Karens, right people, religious people, a lot of them, not getting their spiritual coping skill, right? They're not going to church.
I would agree with that. Absolutely.
So maybe what you're seeing with the older right-leaning Karens is they're not going to church because of COVID restrictions on gatherings. And so they're not getting that healthy coping skill.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's to assume that the Karens were really, whoever they were into it in the first place. Somehow, I'm speaking more with a bias in that, I feel like it might be a little bit more superficial, because they were using their privilege to deal with their issues, and now that privilege is gone, like taking vacations or getting manicures, pedicures, or whatever, they're now forced to confront the reality of their life.
The only thing I would challenge that, and I think I'm not saying you're not right, actually. I'm just challenging
I think you are right too.
I'm just challenging it a little bit. I was seeing that happen before COVID.
Okay.
Definitely from about 2016 on.
Does seem like
there was a
switch.
Huge spike. And I think it's such a multifactorial occurrence. The spiritual piece, the political piece, the coping skill piece.
This is getting exactly where I was heading, and that's why I wrote right here. Political, moral, essay, and coping. Because I believe that one leads to another, and I think this is where you're heading, which is political is where it started. It started politically in 2016, and we know the smoking gun.
And it was way more of what you're calling Sharons in the beginning.
Exactly, 100%.
The right-leaning Karens are fairly new.
Right, and they're starting to come as a response to said Sharons. But it started out as a political thing, so that already started working in the back of their mind to divide and separate people, just as a construct in general. And the next thing that you come to is the moral issues that they run into. And I think that the divisiveness leads to that morality decline. Like you said, church, etc. So 2016 here just progressively got worse until we hit 2020. And then the moral and all of that stuff just, it fell apart because now people aren't able, like you said, with the COVID, they're not able to go to church, they're drinking more often, etc. So I think it went from political to morals, not being able to go to church as much, and also that divisiveness over the past 4 years, to where now it's leading to that substance abuse and those coping mechanisms that they never learned in the first place to deal with said moral and political problems.
Or even just the fact that their marriages may have been horrible for 20 years, and they never paid attention.
So have you ever heard of triangulation? Have you?
Talking about with like GPS?
No.
Okay, no.
So, in a relationship, if the couple, I think, is this Mnuchin? When a couple is struggling as a couple on a romantic and intimate level, they will bring in a third party to balance them out. And a lot of times, it's a child. They will take the child and they will triangulate the child and incorporate the child into every fabric of their existence, because the relationship between those two is so weak.
That sounds like a terrible. I can see so many problems coming from that.
And it's actually a big problem it's a big problem with millennials.
Yeah.
Because like the age of divorce and stuff, people turning their children into their friends, right? Instead of their children. And they triangulate their kids to add stability. Well, instead of us loving each other and having a relationship, we're going to make our entire world revolve around our child.
And avoid the real problems.
Avoid the real problem in our relationship and the intimacy, and we're going to focus all of our efforts on our child. And of course, what you're seeing with some of these people is once their kids are out of the house,
yeah,
and they're there with their they have 20 years, 18 years of a marriage that has been long decrepit. And now they are thrust together with nothing but their own failed marriage.
That does make sense, yeah. And that would add into the age demographic like we were talking about, so that would make sense.
But you can also triangulate. It doesn't have to. We have also a lot of people that didn't have kids. So what are you going to triangulate into and focus on if you don't have kids?
Politics.
For sure. Yeah.
And so that becomes the core of everything.
You see, this brings up another point. Today apparently is Super Bowl Sunday. I don't know. I just found
I
out.
don't even know who's playing.
I
but
saw
it
on
is.
Facebook, so ain't nobody give a shit about that. It's silly. But
Is that today?
yeah, I think so.
God, we're such nerds.
It really are. But I don't feel like those people are nerds. But
Sports
anyway.
nerds are the worst.
Yeah, they really are. They never shut up. Like, I can go on with my science fiction shit for like 15 minutes. Them, it's like 24/7. It's ridiculous. But anyways.
So why are you wearing a jersey, man? You can't even...
That's my team, bro. Oh, you've met them? You know them?
Feel good.
I've never... Those people would not piss on you if you were laying there burning. Like, they don't know
It's like
you.
being obsessed with an actor or actress.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's just as pathetic.
Yeah.
I'm going to look like I'm a sports person when the reality is I get winded walking up my steps.
Yeah, but I played. I was a quarterback back in high school when I peaked at the age of 17.
Don't get me started on golf. I think golf is the sport for high school athletes who have failed. But anyway.
But let me get to where I was heading. Sports used to be a common factor of people, men specifically, to act out their aggression towards another person, in a friendly game.
It's called sublimation, like in Freudianism, when you do something, you get out unhealthy urges through productive,
Channel it.
socially acceptable means.
Like when Athens started the games.
Yeah.
What, thousands of years ago?
War would stop.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that was the point of them. And it is a great way for human beings to be able to deal with that type of stuff.
And
but where women don't, or historically have not been as heavy into sports or as enthusiastic about sports, what else are they going to find? And I think that's the reason that you don't have what would be the other Tims and Toms. You don't have a lot of Tims and Toms. Guys aren't arguing about this shit, nearly as much.
When they injected politics into football, it's in basketball, and that it actually caused a disruption with men.
Yeah.
Sports no longer became that coping mechanism where people could get together and just cheer for their team. They actually created a political divide by injecting politics. They inject politics in everything.
I'm sure it exists there, but there's not Tims and Toms for a reason. And I'm not saying anything bad about the opposite gender. That's not the point. The point is, it seems like it's affecting them heavier, and society's noticing it heavier, and they're reporting
Maybe we
it
just
more often.
notice it more because it's women acting
think?
aggressively, as opposed to a certain level of male aggressiveness we're used to in speech and conveying their point.
So you think maybe that men have always acted like this and we're just used to it, but women have just recently started acting like this, so now we're reporting them more often?
No, that there's more of an acceptable way of men articulating the way they feel. But some of these Karens are completely batshit and irrational.
They are getting very masculine in their way. Fuck you and fuck that policy and I'll beat the shit out of you. We're not used to hearing that from a woman.
Yeah.
Maybe that does have a little bit to do with it.
I think just by nature, women are more emotional. And by the way, I don't consider that to be a bad thing. I think it's essential that men are more logical. Someone's got to be emotional.
Yeah,
and someone's got to be logical. We have to balance each other out.
We had that discussion. Like, what if I got with a super logical woman? That would be a disaster. Like,
no, I think evolution set that up. We need that balance.
Yeah, we do.
Sorry, that was my alarm. I have to bring the pups in at some point this evening. I'll set it for an hour from now. We're good. Sorry.
Yeah, so...
But I think it's that emotionality just on overdrive.
I'm not disagreeing. It's just, it's something. I just wonder if it's not something else. More than this emotion.
My wife has an interesting theory too, and I would almost put it on your list above politics.
Which is?
Our society has become so successful, and technology has made it so we have so much free time.
So comfort.
That people are, we live in a phenomenal time in history. I live better than kings of old.
Yeah.
And we don't experience suffering on the same degree, but also just more free time to just sit and think about stuff.
That's true.
You know, people would get back, watch that. There's a show, I think it's on Amazon Prime, about they live in like Victorians. And I can't remember the name. It's called Victorian Farmer or something, or Victorian Farm. And the work around the home that a woman did was fucking brutal. The work that a man did was fucking brutal. By the time they got home, fed the kids, it got dark, they were out. Yeah. And then they woke up and did it all again. Where we work 8 hours, France works like 10. And, we have like 8 hours of just downtime a day. Yeah. Maybe more.
Well, when did that explosion of philosophers happen? I'm not talking about the old Greek philosophers, but wasn't it just the 1800s we had an explosion of philosophers? And you got to have a comfortable society to have philosophers.
The Renaissance is when it first started, where people were getting hired by the courts to think.
But, back in the day when you were in Greece, you had one philosopher for 10,000 people. Then in the Renaissance, maybe you had 100 philosophers for 10,000 people. Do you think now you've got 20,000 for 100,000? At your home, do it.
More than that.
No, I'm saying at home, do-it-yourself philosophers. People that are trying to jump into philosophy when they really don't have any background in this. Do you get what I'm saying?
I don't know.
And then they're using their emotions with something that's already been figured out. If that makes sense. It's already been philosophized by 1,000 people 1,000 ways, and now they want to put their 2 cents in.
Well, everyone wants to
what you were talking about
with the internet.
I was actually having this conversation with my mom earlier today. She watches like Gunsmoke and stuff. And we were talking about that. She said, Leslie, sometimes I don't even watch it. I just put it on. And I said, it's just such a simpler time.
That's
that's
my wife, watch Little House on the Prairie, something. And that show's brutal, by the way. I mean, they have their kid died, it's hard living.
And that's what I was telling my mom. I was like, they didn't have time to be mentally ill.
No.
Who had time back in them days to be mentally ill?
I think
you would be dead.
So that's why
if you could indulge in mental illness.
That's why I put the success of our country before politics. People have more time to think about thoughts.
Right.
And
the main thing that they thought about in 2016,
politics.
Politics.
They were told to think that.
Right.
Everybody turned everything political. You couldn't even watch a night show to laugh.
Oh, it's definitely devised. It's obvious that it was devised to do exactly
politics.
What it's
well, and also when you look at politics, it's a very complex structure, because religion and politics are processed in the temporal lobes, and so they have that, and there's that in the amygdala and stuff. There's that. The whole emotional aspect is tied to politics, the same as religion, right? And when you look at a rise in atheism, I'll say, people are feeling that with something. So with what you're seeing with a lot of people is that fundamentalist, batshit crazy religious side is moving towards politics.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So people, we talked about that the other week. Thomas Aquinas said, people have that God-shaped hole in their heart.
Yeah.
So people are filling that with something if they don't believe in a God, and it's becoming, politics is their religion.
Right. Yeah, you're right. It's
and
becoming
they're
an
looking
ideology.
at it with that same fervor that a batshit crazy fundamentalist
Well,
Baptist.
both
And I'm glad
are-
you said fundamentalist, because that's not all religious people.
No.
Just as
And
that's
it's
not all
all
people that are interested in
political.
politics. So,
Well,
yeah, it's
both are
fundamentalists.
the ideology, right? I mean, you take the right, and Jerry Falwell created the moral majority in the 80s, so that is threaded with Christianity. But the left, you've got your social justice warriors, and that's an ideology all in itself.
Well, they're using that because they're trying to ignore that morals are based on religion. So they have to create their own moral hierarchy.
Yeah.
And that's coming through their politics. That's why everything is a moral argument with the left. Healthcare is a moral right. No, healthcare is a luxury. It is a product of a society that has wealth and science. It's a luxury that we should all be grateful for.
Mm-hmm.
Not trying to get too much off of a politics spin, but something that, and I know that you're familiar with this argument on Rogan, and it's a good argument, and I'm still all for privatizing capitalism when it comes to healthcare. But it's not a terrible argument that he makes here. Mm-hmm. And he compares it to police departments and fire departments. In other words, you've got somebody laying there dying because they don't have any money, or they got kicked out of their job, or whatever happened, but they're laying there dying and they have no money to be able to go to the hospital to be able to get taken care of.
Right.
Now, I know there's Medicaid or Medicare,
Medicaid,
whichever one it is.
Medicare's for older folks.
Well, it depends. I mean, you can be on disability and be
get
younger
Medicare.
and get Medicare.
Yeah, that's
Right.
true.
But outside of that, just going to a hospital today, I don't have time to get Medicare. Like, I'm dying, or like I'm extremely ill, and I'm, know, to get taken care of, because you can't get Medicare in the time that you're going to die from pneumonia. It ain't a 1 week process.
Well, and hospitals can't turn you away, but that doesn't mean you're not going to get like a $100,000 bill.
Exactly, which will suffocate you. You might as well just eat a bullet at that point.
Medicaid will retro 3 months, but not Medicare.
Okay, well that's a good start. But
yeah.
Regardless of the
let's
specific
not
policies,
get into healthcare debate.
But
It's not a debate; it's a fact.
well, he does make a good point of why are we comfortable with paying tax money to fire departments and police departments, but not hospitals, not medical access for poor people, or just for the general public in general. And it is a good point, because, and this is the point that they made this morning with Ali. You heard it. Was you live in a jurisdiction, you're my neighbor, but your jurisdiction, the boundary stops right here and your house catches on fire. So when a fire truck pulls up, I'm like, no, he's not in you can go back. And they just leave. That would be absurd, right? So it's the same way as you've got cancer and you've got insurance, you're getting taken care of, or you're in the system and you're getting taken care of. Your neighbor has cancer and he's slowly dying because he can't pay any of his medical bills, or some short-term illness, whatever it is. It was a good argument, though, and I was like, I get where he's coming from, because if you think about it, police and fire services like that are socialism. 100%. There's no way to deny that those things are socialism.
Social programs are not socialism. Socialism is when the government controls the ends and the means of production.
Okay, well,
you can
programs.
you can be capitalist and have social programs.
Okay, well, I'm
actually, I would say that capitalism is best for it because it gives the society the money to fund social programs
and the need to advance. So no, I agree. You know me, I'm diehard capitalist, but I think that it is a good point, and I'm not really sure how I would argue that. How would you articulate and argue that against that? You know what I'm saying? Because I thought about it this morning. I was like, I don't really know what I would say if he was getting me with this. I don't know how I would respond.
I actually have really good answers for that, but that's completely off topic.
It's true. It's a little off topic.
I mean, that's like
we talked about dogs for 45 minutes.
Hey, now.
But I like dogs.
That segued into that because the root of it was the uncomfortable question. But actually, the healthcare debate would be actually its own topic we could do.
I think that would be a good one, because that's that is one of the few things where me as a capitalist, I look at that and I'm like, that's kind of a hard one to answer. Because there's a lot of variables to that.
There is some moral argument to our ability to at least help people who are dying. I would say there is a moral obligation.
Versus lip injections.
Yes.
Yeah,
I mean,
100%.
There's definitely a line, and I think that would be a great, maybe when you lead the next one.
Okay.
Like that would be a great, because we could easily talk 2 hours, I think, about the moral implications of our responsibility for
I think
sickly
me and you
people.
have had the specific argument
I
or
also
conversation.
think, Joe, I do remember hearing that podcast, and Joe Rogan did have a really good argument for that. And I also have felt that way for a very long time myself. And I would always get like, if somebody come back, well, or I'd point out like Canada, and then somebody would rebut saying, well, you've got to wait this amount of time in Canada if you have like a broken arm.
Yeah, because
you can't, the access to care
it's a stick of butter,
different,
right?
But I don't know.
You can only butter everyone's bread so much with one stick of butter. So you have to figure out who needs it the most. But that's a whole different topic, right?
Yeah.
But we're looking at,
How did we get? Where were we before
get
that?
here?
You went off on that tangent. I'm not even quite sure why. And
I'm sitting here thinking, how did we
I guess
get
because
here?
I guess because I said that there are people that are trying to create their own moral truths without religion.
Oh yeah, and then we kind of bounced off of that,
but
like
on
a different ideology.
But
okay.
on a macro level, I'm looking at it as a spiritual decline, but also, like my wife has pointed out, people have so much time on their hand because we are a product and a failure of our own success.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And back in the 19th century, even in my grandparents' time, you just didn't have the luxury to sit around and think too much unless that was your job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
my mom is always like, you need to stay busy.
Which is why, by the way,
stay busy.
With COVID, I think it's on crack because people are at home.
Yeah. Oh, it makes it a
And so
thousand
they
times
have
worse.
nothing to do but watch the news and get anxious and panicky
So I think something good for the cast would
and
be
emotionally volatile.
rather than us just sitting here and analyzing this, what are some of the coping mechanisms you guys have to not become Sharons and Karens and Tims and Toms?
I love that question. That's such a good question.
Because that might help the audience, somebody that is suffering from...
If they have the awareness to know that that's them.
Which
because
the vast majority
No,
of
they
these
don't.
would not.
They don't, because you know how all those Karen videos go viral? They post them.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they think that,
They think that people...
Can you believe that supermarket attendant said that to me?
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
you were
No
berating her.
self-awareness.
You smacked her.
One common thread I've noticed in those videos is, I'm posting this on Vine or on Twitter, and they're going to see just how right I am and how corrupt...
Yeah.
And, they do have a very strong moral superiority, right? I'm sorry, good people don't talk about how good they are.
Yeah.
Well, you touched on something earlier, I think, when you said that humans have a need for conflict in some way, shape, or form. I think you did, or am I making that up?
Well, I would say conflict is how we grow.
Well, some people just crazy make. They make crazy. They stir it and they brew it and then they spew it.
A lot of pot
and
stirrers.
with the reduction of community and it may perhaps like gossiping friends or cutting such and such down because she wore this, that kind of behavior. They don't get to channel that when they're isolated.
It's funny that you mentioned that because that's one of the
thought.
things that I wrote right here, as you guys can see, but I never got around to it. We were talking earlier about violence, about people's natural proclivity towards violence, and if you don't have violence, what are you going to do in lieu of that? And I think when you were speaking about ugliness earlier, although we live in a less violent society, we live in an uglier society. So I don't think maliciousness has went anywhere. I think it's just turned from a physical violence to an ugliness.
It's harassment.
I would argue
and
that
think,
it hasn't changed. That it's always been ugly.
This is the thing. I think that there's a
know.
big change, and this is why I think there's a change. The physical violence has decreased. Because now, you know, if you even touch that person, you're going to go to jail for a long time, and there's no getting away with it because there's cameras everywhere.
Yeah, they're going
so
to definitely
people
give you
now
more.
are willing to curse you out in the middle of Walmart because they know they're not going to get hit in the fucking mouth.
Yeah.
Well, and I think
they know that the likelihood of you getting more probation is so high, and
Yeah.
but no, there's another common thread, and it's going back to that, which is a systemic problem in our society, and almost all these Karens and Sharons, there is a moral superiority
Yeah.
in there.
Yeah.
You know,
Entitlement.
it is, but it's absolute moral superiority. And the thing is, they're having to justify their own declining morals with whatever arbitrary morals they have given themselves. And so I believe that that's actually a huge factor. And I mean, like we said, it's very complex. But I definitely think that things are getting uglier.
Well, the reason why I said that is I feel like, you know, people have been, these are thoughts that people have thought before. You know, people are not very kind to one another. You know, to me, that's bullshit.
I don't know.
But what I'm saying is that social media perhaps has made people feel like they have the license
anonymity has
to
not
now
been...
start spewing it verbally.
Anonymity has been terrible.
My only issue with that
There's
is
no responsibility
I agree
attached.
with you that prior to 2016, the ugliness that we saw caught on video had existed the whole time.
Yeah, there's always ugliness.
Right, but
to
we
some
just
extent.
started seeing it on video, and now it's going viral and it's everywhere, so you see it more often. Just like cop shootings, just like anything else, that it's kind of rare, but now you see it a lot more, so you think it happens a lot more often. But I think since 2016, the amount of misbehavior on cell phone prior to 2016 and 2016 to 2021 is a world of difference. I think that there's a lot more of it now. You don't think so? You think it was the same prior to 2016?
I think the expression is more, is what I'm saying. But I think the ugliness that is inherent in humans has always been there. People don't express it as freely
everybody's
as what they do.
It's like the Jungian shadow. You know, we all have that dark side. But I'm going to disagree. I think it's gotten worse.
Well, that's what my mom says too. We're just on a decline.
Outside
humanity.
Outside of
Thank you.
I just got sidetracked.
It's okay. You'll think of it again.
Yeah, I probably will. So, I don't know. I think we need to look at it from and actually Biggie's perspective was the same, that we've had a good run, and and we're on a downcline.
We've had by far, I think that we've had the most powerful empire that's ever existed, even in comparison to the Mongols, to China.
Well, all those were
to
so
Rome.
A lot of those were so short-lived.
Well, I don't know.
Ours
Not
is
in comparison to ours. Ours has been by far the shortest lived.
Yeah, like
we don't 200 or 300 years. Theirs lasted thousands.
Yes.
But some of them thousands. But
the Roman Empire was several thousand years.
What, 1400 years? Well, I guess if you count Constantinople and Byzantine Empire. But I mean, the empire started with Augustus? No, 1200 years. 1400 years.
I feel like
the Roman
it was
Empire.
like 2000.
Well, no, that's because they were a republic before they were an empire.
But regardless of that, we're one of the shortest lived empires, but we are the most powerful empire and the most influential in world domination.
Some of that is because of technology change, travel, and all that.
100%.
But we don't have a cart and horse. But
right, but we also didn't do the Roman Empire thing to where we went to Iraq. Why didn't we take it? We went to Vietnam. Why didn't we take it? We didn't do that, but we controlled things economically around the world.
Yeah, we didn't pour salt in their fields.
Right.
And then, take their women
Yeah.
as wives and slaves. No, but we also don't know how long we're going to limp along. Because Rome was on a decline, I would say, from, they call it the Pax Romana, which lasted 200 years. But honestly, when you look at Rome, after Augustus died, they started declining. And that was very early in the empire, and they limped along for 1,000 years.
Well, they had some crazy emperors in between there,
they
too.
had a long succession of crazy emperors. And periods where, like, they'd have 5 emperors in 1 year. Because Praetorian would just assassinate one, then sell the throne.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they limped along for 1,400 years. Whereas, you know, we don't know how long we're going to limp along.
Right.
You know, we're just seeing the downcline right now.
How does modern technology and modern economy change that? Would it be faster, shorter, slower?
We'll find out.
I know.
Well, actually, we'll probably be dead.
What would be your guess if you just had to guess? You think it'd be
I say it's faster because I'm not seeing. Yeah, there's a lot of benefits to technology, but I'm seeing more negative when it comes to humanity and
when it comes to societal
mental
health.
Again,
and
we
morality.
see each other as two-dimensional. That with these things, you know, we don't see an actual person, and even worse now with COVID. You know, because everybody's on a Zoom, you know. We're not looking at each other face to face.
Well, and politically, we're dehumanizing people constantly.
Something that just hit me
it's really not healthy.
When you mention the cell phone and you mention social media, you make a very good point there, because a lot of that decline, you had to fucking walk or horse and cart it to the nearest town square in order to sit there and express your ideology with a bunch of other people, which was downhill. Now, you send out a tweet, 500,000 people see it, retweet it, and tweet back. And it's like you're in the town square 24/7. Well, so we might see that decline hit in 5 years.
But
because we're always in the town square, always demoralizing one another.
Tiny piece of who a person is, because, like, I can look at Callie and we could be completely disagreeing with each other, but I can look at his eyes and I know, you know, he still has respect for what I'm saying. I know he's an honorable man who loves his family. You know, he has these qualities that are really important with my moral compass. So if me and him disagree on something, I'm not going to tear him up about it.
Right, and they mention that, and Rogan mentions that all the time, is these Twitter comments back and forth. Two people would never say that to one another if they were sitting across the table.
Very few.
Yeah, very few. And those are the types of guys that get in bar fights every day anyway.
A Karen would, right?
Yeah, apparently. But that's a new entity.
But, you know, it's funny because we talked about that. Karens are doing in public what people are actually doing on YouTube comment sections.
Yeah, it's almost like they've gotten comfortable with it. Like, this is just how we live.
Well, they're safe with anonymity. Anonymity is not good for people because the safety of the Jungian shadow,
the illusion of that safety, if you carry that into
the
public,
ugliness, you know, has freedom. But also with technology, I think our decline will be rapid because, especially with military changes and weaponry, I think it's much quicker for another nation to just swoop right in and take over.
Yeah, that's true. Because, I mean, and the thing is, the easiest way to cripple a nation right now, rather than trench line or nukes, is economy. So if you can cripple somebody's economy, you can just walk through the front door. And I mean, it's always been like that, but especially now.
Well, I mean, you look at the Roman...
That's the most realistic way to take over a country, is just cripple its economy to where it doesn't have a military.
You look at the Roman Empire. For about 300 years after the Pax Romana ended, the Western Empire was on a sharp decline, and they were losing out primarily to random tribes of Germanic barbarians. And so they started moving it to the east, and then they eventually lost to the Ottoman Empire, which was a very large, organized empire.
Yeah.
But, you know, we don't have like little hordes of bandits attacking us at little sides. But for someone like China or Russia to just swoop in, they have large military prowess, and they can just come in and just annihilate a destabilized country like us. And the first thing you do is economic, right? And then you can come in. And so I do think that our decline will probably be quicker than the Roman Empire or the Persian Empire or something.
I certainly agree, and
But
I think we all three agree with that.
But
I do
But we
agree.
don't know. But with the Greeks, with the Romans, there was a sharp moral decline that speared it on. It starts with morals, and honestly, dehumanizing people is, how many people say stuff like, instead of Democrats, they say demon rats.
Yeah.
And, or, they label 75 Americans as domestic Nazi terrorists.
Deplorables,
they're
Trumpsters.
They're demonizing the other side, and that's...
And anytime somebody likes Trump, they're automatically a white supremacist, which I don't get that, and I don't even like Trump.
It's
I don't even get. I'm like, how is that fucking possible? Perhaps they're just in alignment with
It's
his
an
politics.
easy way to blow them off.
when you dehumanize someone, you can justify unscrupulous behavior towards them, right?
And the number one quickest way to dehumanize somebody right now is to call them a racist.
Oh yeah.
Oh, there's so many different ways.
But I mean, that's the most common one, and one's thrown around like an old piece of sausage.
Oh yeah, what did Elizabeth Warren said that like climate change is racist or something like? I mean,
Oh god.
it goes beyond logic and reason. It's just pure emotion.
I saw a book in Barnes and Nobles, and the literal title was "How to Be an Anti-Racist." I'm like,
Don't be
aren't
racist.
we? Aren't I? But by definition, not interested in, or think that it's abhorrent to be a racist. But but what it's saying is, let me teach you how to be an anti-racist according to the way I think you should be anti.
And most of it
Racist.
is actually pretty racist once you start reading it.
Yeah, I might get that book.
It's just picking
just to read it.
It's just picking a different race to crap on,
Yeah.
and it's inherently racist too half the time. And I think Morgan Freeman hit it really well when he said, "You just stop talking about it."
100%.
But there's a lot of people that are they need that moral superiority to fill that hole in their soul.
Well, having a moral compass of loving everybody, regardless of their skin color, is not good enough for some of these folks.
That's
not good enough.
One of the objective truths that you see in religion is rooted in the Greek term agape. Do you know what that is?
Well, isn't it something like togetherness? Agape is togetherness or something, or
So,
all of us, whole.
Agape is basically a general love for your neighbor.
Yeah. It was something
And
like that.
so in almost all religions, that exists. And when you remove religion, that's why we were talking about this with our spiritual moral development. When you remove that, you start to see that decline. And so people they're coming up with different ways to be moral, right? But they're very trendy and they're very fluid. Religion is very concrete and very old, and those morals are very fixed. And you have something greater than yourself that you're always trying to achieve. When your God is political, that's a person. That's a thought. I mean, and I don't want to argue whether or not God is a thought, because if you believe God's real, then it's not just a thought, right?
But this seems to just sway with whoever has the strongest point of view in the moment.
Yeah, well, which is why when your morals are based purely on political means, they're very fluid. What someone considers to be a moral right now, we'll look at what was a moral right in 1850 compared to now, right? We find those things, a lot of them abhorrent now.
And I'm not getting off on a politics versus religion debate, but the way that I do it is not like a lot of people, of course, they get their morals from religious structure. And then a lot of people, like we're seeing now, get their morals from a political structure. And we can see that that's not good.
It's not working.
Right. But I do think that there's a nice in between.
I do too.
And I think it's crazy to suggest this, but it's almost do unto others as you would like them to do to you. Don't hurt people. If you just follow that fucking basic premise, like that right there, that to me, even if politics or religion didn't exist, I have a feeling I would have the same set of moral principles.
So,
and that's what it would boil down to is,
And that's
is
how
there a victim here? Did I victimize someone?
Be. Life could be that simple, but people don't want it to be that
100%.
simple.
well, see, and so you had asked that what do we do to not feed into that, right? And I think having that guiding do unto others principle is a great way to not get sucked into that. Because anyone can have an emotional reaction to someone, right? And that's a human response. It's very normal. Acting on it, I look at it, your philosophy, do unto others. I mean, it's not like you created that philosophy. It's ancient. Right?
Yeah.
Is an objective truth. The golden rule. It's objective. It's in all religions.
And I think that it's so ancient and so old because it's a natural human feeling.
It's
when you victimize somebody for no reason, for your own personal, it hurts you as a person.
It's
yeah.
It's self-evident. But also the other thing that I practice that helps me day to day is taking full responsibility for my actions and my emotions. Somebody can trigger my emotions, right? But ultimately, I'm responsible for my emotions and my behavior. What we're seeing with a lot of the Karens is they're blaming everyone for how they think and feel. They're not taking any responsibility for their behavior. And so I would say a combination of respecting each other and trying your damnedest to not hurt others emotionally, physically, spiritually, and taking full responsibility for your thoughts and your emotions and your behaviors is really all we need. And everyone's coping skills to get through varies from person to person.
And being an example of a person who demonstrates, because I can tell you when Callie says that he does that, I know he does it because I witnessed you processing things that I had said to you that were designed to just annoy the shit out of you. And I'd see you'd be like taking a breath and like I pay attention to people, and Callie really does do that. You don't do it all the time. Sometimes you spit shit too, but
well, sometimes you gotta be put in your place.
But the majority of the time, I see him working things out, and I actually working with him. I learned to do that myself. I'll be like, all right.
Every time you're ugly to somebody, it takes away a little bit of your character.
It does.
And a greatest test of somebody is how they treat others when they have total anonymity. When they can be absolved of their responsibility, do they still treat others well?
That is a great test. That's a true test of integrity.
And so one thing you can do and this is one thing I would recommend to everybody, when you're on the internet and you're in the comment section, before you...
That's where I live.
Me too. Before you text, tweet, whatever, ask yourself, is what I'm doing hurting or helping? If any part of you thinks, well, maybe this is ugly or negative, I'm not going to do it, and I'm going to rewrite it in a way that is productive, we would see a large improvement.
Have either of you ever done something really shitty to a person and immediately it felt like the knife was coming back at you, like a visceral, like, oh fuck, I really did that? Have you ever felt that?
Oh yeah.
Or is
Yeah,
it
well, once in a while, yeah.
okay?
Not
so
so
that's
much recently,
good,
but
that's a good gauge, right? If you could,
yeah, if you're not a, I mean, the problem is we also, one thing we're seeing is large trends in sociopathy and narcissism.
Yeah.
And you're not going to
You're
get
right.
that knife
You're right.
feeling if you lack
Yeah.
empathy.
right.
And we're seeing so much narcissism going on.
Mm-hmm.
And
They're justifying it.
so it's people are rationalizing their
Yeah.
behavior and demonizing half of a country is a quick way
Yeah.
to rationalize. Well, they're just a demon rat. Who cares?
No.
Oh, well, they're just a neo-Nazi.
Yeah. So it's still like
And what-
dehumanizing them. So
Well-
therefore, there's no way you could feel that empathy or the reduction.
What was that? They were that Antifa thing, punch a Nazi, and they were attacking like elderly Christian people who were like the most loving people you'd ever see.
Yeah.
But they had rationalized their violent behavior.
Or attacking Jews.
Yeah, or attacking Jews.
Yeah.
And then calling
He's a
someone.
conservative Nazi. It's like Ben Shapiro?
Yeah, he's a
He wears a beanie, man. Or a yarmulke.
He's a Orthodox Jew. You're trying to silence a Jewish person.
By calling him a Nazi.
You are a brown shirt.
Yeah.
Well, you know, we live in a a Venn diagram right now of Idiocracy, 1984, and
A little bit of Clockwork Orange.
a little bit of Clockwork Orange and Brave New World. We're like right there in the middle of like all three of that in the Venn diagram. It's kind of a terrifying time to be alive.
Just watched that this morning. Me and my droogs. Like,
Oh, Clockwork Orange. That's
Yeah,
and
fucking loved
Clockwork Orange. That's a dystopian society on the
Yep.
decline, and what is the theme of that?
they try to rehabilitate the guy, but he becomes a victim of his old past.
Yeah, well, ultraviolence
Oh, yeah.
it's
Getting ready for a bit of the ultraviolence.
I haven't seen that movie.
Oh,
I
you
to
need
sit
to
and
watch it.
No,
It's-
I don't know. It's horrible.
Really? I loved it. It's an old Stanley Kubrick film. It's
He's pretty wild, Stanley Kubrick.
It's a hideous time to live in that
Yeah.
that world because it's. And you know
just
me,
the real English of it though makes it an interesting film because it's silly.
Okay.
well, it's a combination of English and Russian, the language that they speak. It's like Cockney mixed with Russian.
Yeah. It's weird. It's got a very specific taste to it. But yeah, it's dark and silly.
It's dystopian.
Yeah.
And well, so is 1984, and so is Brave New World. And Idiocracy is dystopian too, right? That movie.
Yeah. Well, my advice for people who, especially during this COVID time, and I don't really know that it's advice. All I can say is what I would do. Was your question, like, how do we get through this? Is that, am I right? Like that
Right.
first question.
What are your specific skills? How are you preventing from becoming?
Well, I have certainly gained weight over this lovely COVID time, so I don't recommend y'all indulge in tasty foods.
Well, there's no
But-
there's no truth in vices. You know, people who are coping with addictive behavior, that's not helping.
No, it's making it worse.
It's making
'cause
it worse.
You get the COVID,
And so-
your ass will die quicker.
And so we're having so many people that are, and you brought up the substance abuse angle. So many people are coping with hedonism because it's dopamine. You feel a little bit better in the moment, right? The problem is
Yeah.
long term, it's messing you up.
I'm satiating my uncomfortable anxiety, which is that hedonism? I don't know. Hedonism feels like you just do what the fuck you want.
Well,
But I there is something in the brain where you kind of justify it
there's
for sure.
well, I mean, we only got like 9 minutes here, so like Epicurean philosophy, which is what hedonism is based on from Epicurus, it's a little bit different. He actually comes to the conclusion that it's an avoidance of anything that causes displeasure. And what Epicurus actually said was the way that you actually practice real hedonism to avoid discomfort is by eliminating want and dependence on other things. It's actually kind of very Buddhist in a way. And it's actually not indulging in all your senses. That actually just creates more want, right?
Oh, yeah, because it's a hole you'll never feel.
Because the reward system of our brain feeds into that.
Yeah.
So actually what Epicurus said, true hedonism is actually avoiding doing all that behavior. But what we see with modern hedonism is just satiating the reward system constantly.
Yeah.
Like a rat pressing the button for food.
Yeah. Well, I think for sure don't do that. But I think what I've done to keep my sanity over the COVID is that to be patient. Because this too shall pass. You know, nothing stays the same forever. I mean, we're going to move eventually, whether it's forwards or backwards.
So we're looking at the domains that we kind of came up with. Comfort, politics, substance abuse, and morals, right?
Yeah, comfort to politics to morals.
Well, I would say having patience is a coping skill. That falls under a coping. You know, you can decide to be patient with life, patient with the process, patient with not knowing the outcome of something.
So, well, I agree. So let's look at, in the last few minutes, how we treat that with the politics. I would say a good coping skill right now would be to turn off the fucking news.
Oh yeah,
that's so funny.
I haven't had the news for almost 5 years.
I mean, turning off the news and cutting yourself off social media is a phenomenal way to help heal that.
Yeah, you can see I wrote that down a couple of minutes ago while she was answering, because that was my answer. To an extent, it's a dual answer. Blissful ignorance when it comes to the news, and don't get me wrong, that's not ignorance entirely. I'm just refusing to watch mainstream media because I know that there's no sustenance there. Well, it's left and right wing talking points, and that's it.
They're feeding that.
Yeah, it's not
flim flam. It's like a confidence.
It's not news. It's entertainment.
Yes,
100%.
Yeah. Well, they want you to be drawn in, of course.
Yeah, it's sensationalism themselves.
But the thing is, once you realize that deep down inside, it does not hit you that way. At least for me. Because the moment that I realized, we're not doing the news on either one of these networks. We just made entertainment channels. At that point, they affect me in no way, shape, or form because neither one of them are viable. Nope. Neither one of them are facts.
No.
Neither one of them are relevant.
No, they're trying to hook you. And, you know, people need to be
They're Jerry
careful.
Springer in your ass.
Yeah, the people need to be really careful about hooks and traps. And that is... one of the biggest things with this media thing is it's a hook, it's a trap, it's to get you to stir an emotion in you, but it's only to serve their purpose, not any real issue going on.
So the reason that I was so excited to do this one is because instead of watching the news, I think a much more entertaining thing to do and a much better use of my time is to study the folks that do watch the news. And that leads to my interest in this podcast, which is why I brought it up in the first place, because I've witnessed two of these people, a no shit Karen and a no shit Sharon. I've witnessed both of them and their reactions. Granted, 2016 to 2020, the Karen was flipping and flopping and just screaming, laying on the road, pounding fists. And I said to myself, wouldn't it be wild if the next 4 years it was the other side doing this? Sure fucking enough. The day it hit, flipping, flopping, screaming, flailing, and...
Yeah, what'd you say? Leatherface screaming, flailing with his chainsaw down the...
Spinning around in the middle of the road.
Yeah, so...
But yeah, studying the folks is more interesting than studying the news. So I won't watch the news at all. I want to hear it from this crazy person.
Okay, well, yeah, but that's good for you.
But they're obviously hooked and... they have bought and
we're trying to appeal to the people who are spinning around in the road, not the people who are just studying them. And so the politics, the best thing you do is distance yourself from it, because there's, yeah, I mean, if it's causing a strong emotional reaction, stop it.
The Karen and Sharon that I'm referring to, they follow this more closely than religious people follow their religion.
Yeah.
I mean, they eat, breathe, and sleep. They dream it. It's very unhealthy for them. That's why it's an interesting study to me, is to watch a person obsess.
Yeah.
Now, and then the other component, substance use, and we can replace substance use with just vices, right? It could be porn, it could be video games, it could be drugs, alcohol, it doesn't matter. Whatever their vice is, that's not an effective coping skill. Anyone in recovery in addictions knows that. So being aware of your maladaptive coping skills and your vices, and tapering those off. If you need treatment, get treatment, right? And replace it with healthy coping skills. So that's that part. But what about, and with the comfort stuff we've talked about in the last one, we talked about gratitude, right? Gratitude is a great way to, and taking responsibility for your actions, and
some kind of cultivating some kind of compartmentalization is not a bad thing, because I have learned to, when I start having anxiety about something, I'm learning to, okay, wait until it comes to your door, cross that bridge when you get to it, so that helps to just kind of, you're not avoiding it, you're just saying, I will deal with that then.
So that just,
right?
The last domain then would just be the moral domain. For people who are spiritual, they just got to figure a way how to practice it without their church or whatever. And, with me, it's easy because Buddhism is all internal locus of control by yourself anyway. You can just go meditate on your couch. It's easy for a Buddhist because it's just inherently just structured differently than someone who thrives on the church community and the fellowship, right? Or synagogue or, mosque, whatever. But someone who doesn't have religion, it gets a little bit more complicated.
Well, and then you on that tangent too, you take people,
especially if they're making politics,
who never really had to suffer, because suffering turns you inward. Suffering makes you go deeper in trying to understand. But people who haven't really had to suffer at all, they're sitting ducks.
Well, and the problem
right
is we have a lot of people that think they're feeling suffering but
they're not,
because we've had it
suffering.
so good,
right? And
everybody suffers day to day as little human beings on the planet, right?
Yeah,
but not like a large scale,
like a profound, life-changing spiritual thing.
And so,
well, something that you mentioned right there is, for the 2016 through 2020, we had one certain sect that was obsessed with being victims. They're obsessed with it.
Well, yeah, because there's a lack of responsibility there.
Right. And now it seems like the other side, when they see the opportunity to get that victim status, they're jumping all over it too. So it seems like just a new train that's coming through that originally only the left was jumping on with the victim status, but now it seems that the right's doing it too, to an extent.
The victim status is appealing for two reasons. One, it absolves you of your responsibility. Two, it gives you control.
It's so strange that it does, though, because if you think about it, a victim is the opposite of the person in control.
It's paradoxical.
It is, yeah.
That victim status is used as a way to get control.
Right. It's a power card.
It's a power card.
Being the victim is more powerful than being the
perpetrator. Because we live in a society that has allowed that to happen.
Yeah.
And... well, I mean...
But the people that are behaving that way, on some level, they know that it's incongruent and therefore ultimately self-destructive to... But, I mean, that's going real deep, but still.
If they have that awareness, yeah.
I think even if you don't have that awareness, I'd say there's a ton of people doing drugs right now and drug addicts, and they're doing it because of decisions like that, but they don't automatically know why. But there's still something in their spirit that's trying to reconcile their own behavior, their own incongruency. Does that make sense?
With morals, even if you don't have, I think we kind of answered the last factor, which was morality. You know, with spiritual people, it's easier. With atheists, they have to live on the carcass of religion. And I know I'm probably triggering the hell out of people. But the golden rule is a first step, right? You
do unto
others
as you would have done to you.
And then the other one is just humility. And because humility would absolve you of the narcissism, right? Mm-hmm. Realizing that you're just a small pebble at the bottom of the river.
Right.
And time flows over you. Mm-hmm. And just do the best you can to treat others how you would want to be treated. Mm-hmm. And I think we would see a big shift in our culture. I know we could go into more, but I feel like that's a pretty good stopping point.
Or Karens could just pick up a damn hobby.
Go back to knitting, Karen.
They could start knitting. They could...
Crocheting mittens for homeless people would be a phenomenal thing.
For homeless. I was going to say for me, but I don't want to appeal to the patriarchy. You know.
Knit those Bernie mittens.
The Bernie mittens.
Oh, I want a pair of them. He got famous from those. Some old guy.
Well, I think that's a good place to stop.
All right.
All right.
Well, from Nana, Callie, and Biggie, your humble narrator. Until next week, cue the music.
Cue the music. Thanks for listening to the Biggie Callie Show. It's been a crazy ride and Nana's here, you know. So come on back next week and give us a friendly ear. We'll have ourselves a merry time and drink American beer.